Hi everyone. In the latest episode of Better Call Saul, we begin with a montage showing Kim and Jimmy trying to get on with their lives following the horror they have just experienced with Howard's death and becoming involved in a cartel war. We see Saul's new office, which is the same one he will use during the events of Breaking Bad. In typical Saul Goodman fashion, we see him putting a neck brace on one of his clients, no doubt to fake an injury claim, leaning into his slipping Jimmy persona. He seems to have easily got back to what he does best, even with all that happened. We see Mike cleaning up the mess Lalo left in Kim and Jimmy's apartment. There is also an interesting scene where we see Mike removing the notes that Kim and Jimmy had made to execute their plan to take down Howard. Mike dealt with and removed anything that could link them to Howard's death. When Kim and Jimmy arrive home, they stand looking at their apartment, which now looks like absolutely nothing took place. Kim pauses for a while, most likely thinking about the events of the last few days, and seems to have been much more affected than Jimmy, who seems to have adjusted back into his work routine. The quote that we heard Jimmy say in last week's preview is now put into context, with him telling Kim that eventually, at some point, they will not think about what they went through and they will be able to forget what happened, to which Kim doesn't reply, hinting she might not be able to get past what has happened. Moving on to the Salamancas, Hector has informed the cartel bosses that he believes Gus killed Lalo and that Lalo called him when he supposedly was killed and told him that he would get his revenge on Gus. Hector wants blood for blood and for Gus to be killed. The problem is that Lalo did such a good job convincing everyone he was dead that nobody believes Hector, not even the Salamanca twins. Lalo made Mateo shave, but keep his moustache and soul patch so they looked alike, and also paid for his dental work so that Mateo's teeth matched his. At the time, these actions were almost genius in convincing the cartel that he was dead. But now this has created an issue for Hector, and means that Hector only has his word against Gus, and can't prove his accusations. He becomes frustrated when nobody is believing him, resorting to using his infamous bell, which Lalo gave to him. Gus might be laughing at Hector's anger and frustration, and how he can only disapprove of what's happening by angrily tapping his bell, but we all know that same sound will come back to haunt the chicken man. We see Gus return to his apartment, now a man without fear after killing Lalo, a step up from when he was zoning out when taking a customer's order or dropping things out of fear of Lalo. Gus now wants to go full steam ahead with his plan for his meth lab and instructs Mike to prepare a crew immediately. Gus seems much more relaxed, even going for a drink and discussing various wines with an old friend, David. Although, Gus leaves David abruptly. David seemed to be interested in Gus and seemed as if he wanted to get to know Gus better, in hope of perhaps starting a relationship. For a moment, Gus let his guard down, but Gus most likely realizes that it can't be feasible to have a significant other in his line of work. He most likely thinks that having a partner would mean it will be another weakness that his enemies will be able to expose, and he wouldn't want to put someone's life at risk like that. It seems Gus has sacrificed having a family in order to build his drug empire. That can't be an easy trade-off, but he seems to have accepted that there's no other option. Moving on to Mike. Mike feels guilt about not telling Nacho's dad, Manuel, what happened to his son, and visits him at his place of work and informs him of Nacho's death. Mike tells Manuel that justice will be done, and Manuel repeats the word justice, leading Mike to think he may not have understood what he was saying because of a language barrier, when in fact he understood it perfectly, but does not view killing the Salamancas as justice, just a cheap form of revenge, and dismisses gangsters and their form of justice. Mike obviously had an emotional connection with Nacho's situation and knew that Nacho wanted first and foremost for his dad to be safe, even going as far as opposing Gus when Gus wanted to threaten Manuel so Nacho would come back, which even led to Tyrus and Mike having a face-off with their guns pointing at each other. Mike was obviously upset with how it ended for Nacho and felt the need to give closure to his father. Mike mentioned how Nacho deep down was not a bad guy. In a way, perhaps Nacho may have reminded Mike of his own son, Matt, who refused to participate in the corrupt practices that his fellow police officers were involved in. Worried Matt would snitch on them, they killed him, leading Mike to get his revenge by killing those two officers. Or maybe Mike viewed this as justice. Manuel is as far removed from the criminal world as you can get. He is a hard-working, legitimate businessman and even tried to stand up to the Salamancas when they wanted to sell their product through his business. He has no desire for this gangster form of justice and tells Mike that his son is gone and walks off bemused by this view of justice. Howard's memorial is taking place at HHM, to which Kim and Jimmy feel obliged to make an appearance. Kim and Jimmy eventually encounter Howard's wife Cheryl, who questions them as they were the last people to see Howard alive. She mentions how Howard told her that Jimmy was harassing him, to which Jimmy says how he felt a little jealous of the way Howard favored his brother over him and says he could have been more considerate towards Howard and was somewhat regretful of his behavior. Cheryl doesn't believe the idea that Howard was a drug addict and questions that it must be wrong and there must be something more to this story. Perhaps startled by Cheryl's constant questioning and reluctance to accept the idea of Howard using drugs, Kim steps in and lies about seeing Howard snorting something one night at HHM and how she regrets not telling anyone, leading Cheryl to walk off in tears. Jimmy reassures Kim that it's over now and the healing can begin. Kim kisses Jimmy and drives off. The next day at court, she tells the judge she can no longer represent her client as she has resigned as a lawyer. Jimmy comes home to the news she has resigned and is stunned and shocked by this news. He tries to persuade her to reconsider and think about her clients. In a desperate attempt to make Kim reconsider, Jimmy wants them to take some time off and get a new place to live to try and leave behind the bad memories. Jimmy says he wants them to go to their hotel room and for Kim to write letters to the Bar Association and her clients, even offering to go and get her printer. When he opens the door, he sees that she has packed her bags. Kim then admits that they are bad for each other and how other people are suffering because of them and how together they are poison. Jimmy is shocked by what he is hearing. The fear of losing the love of his life is clearly overwhelming for him, so much so that his words become almost childlike as he says to Kim that she makes him happy and how they make each other happy and how that could possibly be bad. Jimmy becomes frustrated and says this is because of Howard and mentions how what happened to Howard was not their fault, it was Lalo's. Kim then admits she knew Lala was alive, but didn't tell Jimmy because she feared he would want them to lay low, hide, and stop their plan to bring Howard down, and they would break up as a result. Kim reveals she didn't want that as she was having too much fun in the process of bringing Howard down and didn't think Lala would have done what he did. In this moment, the last part of Jimmy died with Kim, and he became the character we all know from Breaking Bad, the sleazy, scamming, ruthless criminal lawyer with a lavish lifestyle. He had now fully transformed into his Saul Goodman persona. Under all the bravado, the riches, the luxury that Saul Goodman has, is a man trying to hide the pain of not being able to be with the love of his life. It seems after he and Kim parted ways, he became considerably more reckless and doubled down on his dishonest and deceitful tactics when it comes to the law, an unbelievable evolution from when he was in his brother's shadow. At that time, it would have been almost impossible to imagine Jimmy doing what Saul does without thinking twice. Not being with Kim is what led to his chaotic and hectic lifestyle. In a way, Kim made him a more balanced individual overall, but with her out of the picture, he became lost in a world of material possessions to try and gain some form of happiness. It's really quite sad that Jimmy couldn't have lived his dream and been with Kim. If somehow they had ended up together, I don't think that he would have ended up needing the Gene identity, but Kim is somewhat justified in her decision, as her having to witness a man who helped her fund her education, a decent, honest man, be brutally murdered in front of her, was just something they could never come back from. She never wanted something as bad as that to happen to him. Kim didn't seem like the kind of person that would have wanted to bring Howard down the way she did early on in the series. There is some truth in what she said about Jimmy bringing out the worst in her, and her removing herself from the situation was probably best for her. Jimmy will never be able to replace Kim, even with all the women and luxury he can get. He has become self-obsessed, so much so that we see him complain about how his radio ad is being broadcast in mono and not in stereo, and tells his assistant Francesca he will sue the company if the broadcast isn't improved. In the last scene, we see Jimmy's office filled with a shady-looking bunch of people. Remember when Kim told Jimmy to specialize in elder law? Jimmy could not be further away from how he was back then. The Kettlemans had it right early on when they said Jimmy is the kind of lawyer that criminals hire. It's very unlikely, but I do hope there could be a chance where maybe Kim and Jean encounter each other. But as it comes closer and closer to the end, I just cannot see a happy ending for this character. I hope I am proved wrong, but it doesn't look good for Jimmy. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you all for next week's episode reaction. Goodbye.